You're listening to the CEO's Wing Woman podcast. I'm Olivia Jenkins, your host and strategic partner, helping you elevate your brand to cult-like status. Over the past 5 years, I've helped over 500 visionary CEOs to generate in excess of 70 million in revenue. And now it's time for me to share my tips, tricks, and strategies to help you supercharge your growth. I'm here to help you step into your power to develop a bulletproof business and growth mindset to match. Consider me your secret weapon to scale. Let's get started. When we think of successful CEOs, we think of vision, confidence, strategy. But here's what we often forget. None of that matters if the foundation is cracked. Burnout, chaos, no time to think. Not because we're not capable, but because we've built a big business on broken systems. And that's where habits come in. Today's guest, Claire Jackson, is a certified Tiny Habits coach and leadership consultant, but that barely scratches the surface. She has spent nearly 20 years inside some of the world's leading universities, building training models and development programs that transform how people perform. She's worked across Australia, the UK, and beyond, helping leaders at every level shift their behaviour and rewire the way that they lead. And now she's doing something bold. She's rebranded her business, stepped into a new identity as Chief Habits Officer, and built a new kind of space for personal and professional transformation, the Habit Lab. This episode is a roadmap for every founder who wants to scale without burning out. It's about behavior design, yes, but more than that, it's about reclaiming your power, one small intentional action at a time. Let's get stuck in. Claire, welcome. I'm so excited to have you on the show and teach us all things habits. I'd love if you could take the stage and just give a little bit of an intro about who you are, what you do, and how you work with clients.
Hi, Liv. It's such a joy to be here and starting our Wednesday morning together. I'm Claire. I am the Chief Habits Officer at the Habit Lab, and I empower people with a toolkit, a system that is going to help them thrive in work and life. So my intention is to bridge that gap between well-being and nurturing our potential as individuals, and then performance, achieving that high performance so that we can thrive. And what that looks like is being able to mitigate any risk of overwhelm and particularly burnout, specifically, which a lot of us as high achievers experience if we don't have these solid foundations around our habits, which are essentially just the things that we do day in, day out. So I work with organizations across all sectors to come in and deliver training, personal and professional training development programs that really do bridge that gap and are quite unique in nature because we do look at the person as well as what they can do in an organization. And it's been a really fun journey so far, but very early days for the business. So this has been such a brilliant time just to play with what the opportunities are, what people really need when it comes to habit change in a world that doesn't allow us to stop.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm really excited for this episode because I know that a lot of our listeners are visionary CEOs. They are big picture ideas people. They often have a million things on the go and lots of plates spinning in the air. And particularly, in line with motherhood as well, a lot of our listeners are also mums, and that's a juggle, with personal life and professional life. So I'm so excited for all that we're going to cover today and all the amazing tips and tricks that you'll share with us. One of the things that I wanted you to explain a little bit is the tiny habits part of what you do. For listeners that are not familiar with tiny habits, could you give a bit of an intro on exactly what that is?
Sure, I would love to. So I came across the habit the Tiny Habits book, and it is a book that was published a few years ago from an academic at Stanford University. And he has looked at behaviour design for a couple of decades and has put everything he knows into a 3-step method. I came across this book, and it really relates to my own personal journey of habit evolution, transforming the habits that I have struggled with my whole life. And, I had to reach that rock bottom moment that many of us do in order to make change and shifts happen in our life. I was diagnosed with a chronic health condition. I was a new mum. It was the middle of COVID. My quality of life was really at the bottom of a barrel. I really didn't know how to look after myself, and I was definitely in chronic burnout. So I
Mhm.
was throwing myself into work because that was the only thing I felt like I could control. I
Mhm.
couldn't control the things that I was feeling, the physical health symptoms I was experiencing, and I was relying on unhealthy habits that were actually feeding the very illness that I was experiencing but couldn't get a diagnosis for. And so my dark soul of the night was when I was sat across from my rheumatologist, and he told me, um, I'm going to cut my life expectancy by 15 years if I do not do something about this. At this
Mhm.
point, I had been living in survival mode
Mhm.
for about 18 months. And so my health had deteriorated. I'd gained 45 kilos, and I was pretty immobile, and I wasn't able to show up as the mum that I wanted to be for my son. And so he said this to me once I had my diagnosis, which was for lupus. Lupus SLE is a chronic illness that basically the immune system attacks itself. He said these words, and finally I listened and decided that I needed to take action. But where do you start when
Mhm.
everything has fallen apart around you? Well, I knew that one thing I had to do, because my blood results were not getting any better, was to start remembering to take my medication. Now,
Mhm.
at the time, I was also undiagnosed ADHD, which explains why I couldn't remember to do the things I knew were good for me. But I went away, and he used the word habit. And that was my trigger to go and seek out knowledge and information around, well, how do you build a habit when you struggle to remember to do anything? I'd never been able to take a vitamin. I'd never been able to floss my teeth. I'd never been able to be consistent with anything really. And I remembered this book that had come through in a self development subscription box that I'd signed up to. And it's the Tiny Habits book by BJ Fogg. It's a best-selling book, and people are probably familiar with Atomic Habits more
Mhm.
than this. I like to joke that it's the poorer second cousin of Atomic Habits. However, I've read all of the books out there, and I can validate that I think this is a superior method because of the systematic way that it structures habit design. I
Mhm.
really connected to that. Like, I think I should have been an engineer in a previous life. So if you like processes and steps, and I know you do, Liv, I
Mhm.
think this is the method for you. You don't need to read the whole book. You just need to know the method. So I
Mhm.
started with the medication, and slowly but surely that built confidence and competence in my ability to remember to do the things I needed to do. Before I knew it, I'd taken my meds for a few years, a few weeks, sorry, a few months, and then well, now it's been quite a few years. And I started to notice that I was feeling better. That then gave
Mhm.
me the ability to do things, take back control of my time, work less, prioritize my health more. And over time, taking these tiny actions, reducing the habit to the smallest possible component that you can when it's something that you've struggled with for so long
Mhm.
is powerful. It's the
Mhm.
1% rule. Do something 1% more every day, and
Mhm.
by the end of the year, you will be 37 times more competent
Mhm.
in that action, in that habit. So that's the concept. There's a lot to consider when it comes to habit design, but the
Mhm.
concept essentially is that we need to break it down to the smallest component, and we need to use the kind of habit loop theory to design habits where we're cued to do something by an existing habit, and then we celebrate. So starting small, starting tiny is really the key, and that's the premise of Atomic Habits and Tiny Habits.
Amazing. Thank you. And that's such a powerful story that you've had in regards to being able to take yourself from, what you describe as rock bottom to now, being in this incredible business that you've created, being able to then transfer that knowledge and the skills that, you've created over a long corporate career and combine the two together to be able to help people achieve their goals, become more successful and become more fulfilled in their day-to-day life. Can you walk us through a little bit around the work Claire, the professional Claire, and the personal Claire? Because we've heard a little bit about your story now, which is so incredible from your personal background. How did you then put those two things together for professional Claire and, the amazing career that you've had so far?
It's a beautiful question to kind of reflect on, because it's a story that I don't tell very much at all. But when I do think about the journey that I've had in my career and where it's gone, I've dipped my toe in the entrepreneurial world for years now. And I remember sitting every plane journey I would have when I was in the university sector, I would be scribbling in a notebook or in my notes on my phone about different ideas. What could I bring into the world to make a difference in some way? And I remember doing the ikigai,
Mm-hmm.
Japanese, what is it that do what you love, what you're good at, what you have skills in, what's going to make a difference, and where you look at, what is your purpose? And
Mm-hmm.
I had not landed on it until I started to evolve my personal life. And then started to bring it in to my professional life. So I worked in skills development with students and researchers for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never been at the forefront of teaching. I'd always been in the back end. Like, I was
Mm-hmm.
helping the programs run, I was putting the strategy in place, I was seeking out the resources, I was providing the leadership around programs and training in universities in the UK and Australia. But I always shied away from being in the spotlight and doing the actual delivery. And I didn't have a niche area. I always referred to myself as jack of all trades and master of none. And it wasn't until I kind of transformed my life. And they say, do the thing that people ask you about.
Mm-hmm.
And people were asking me about, how have you transformed your life? How have you gone from burnout and really just everything falling apart and not having any control of the things that you do
Mm-hmm.
and your time, to being able to really step up and into your potential and to reclaim yourself again? And you seem like really happy and thriving. And so I decided to go and learn the Tiny Habits method. So I became certified. And it was really more like, I love learning and development. Clearly, I work in it. But it was really like just to learn more and to meet BJ Fogg, who I was a bit of a fangirl of, and to experience, the training with a view that I might do it as part of my role. I thought,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I could probably deliver a few things as part of induction for students, or just do a little like lunch and learn session here and there. But I got the certification. It was fab. And then a friend who worked for the Department for Education in South Australia said, hey, it's Mental Health Awareness Month in October. Would you be willing to do a session, like a
Mm-hmm.
1 hour session, on the Tiny Habits method? And I recoiled and was like, oh my god, like, that's so confronting. I don't deliver. I don't put myself out there. I'll talk about it one-on-one, no problem, but doing that was really a stretch. But I did it, and it was fab, and I felt elated, and I felt like I had finally found something that maybe I could, that lit me up from the inside out. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't need external validation. I literally saw the light bulbs and the difference it could make to people just in 1 hour. And it was on a screen, let alone what I've seen since, where I'm
Mm-hmm.
in rooms with people who have tried everything to get themselves to do the things they know are going to be good for them and help them be successful. And they have not managed yet
Mhm.
until I am able to share this method and they put it into practice and they get the results that they've always wanted. So that's the story. It's evolved. It's been it's been an iterative transition.
Mhm.
I did the sessions for a year alongside some consultancy work, working still again in universities on projects, until I've had the confidence, given myself the evidence that I could go all in and
Mhm.
leave my job. And I left a very safe, secure, mid to senior level position, with a brilliant super to go all in on this, because that's what we're here for, right? It's one precious life, and we got to do what makes our heart happy, in it. So I did it, and it's been 18 months, and it's not been easy, but I'm so grateful that I took the leap.
Amazing. Oh, I love that so much. And I think what you're describing, when you went and did the thing that you were terrified to do, and then afterwards just felt so elated and so excited. There are certain things, I think, as humans, but also in particular as business owners, that when we do them, we leave and you just feel so lit up. Like I feel like that every time I do a call with a client, or, a group coaching call, or a podcast like the one today. I'll, leave the episode and you just feel that, the warm and fuzzies, that you're in the right place doing the right work. So I'm so glad that you found that. And yeah, you've been able to create that with your business is really exciting.
That's your body telling you that you have connected back to self. And
Yes.
it's when we leave something, our body, our gut, or our instinct always knows what's right. And
Mhm.
when we listen, it's speaking our truth. So it's brilliant. I feel the same, and I love that we get to feel that in every day, rather than that disconnect and just
Mhm.
feeling like we're not in integrity with our values or what we should be doing.
Definitely. I'd love for you to walk us through how to approach designing a habit that actually sticks, because I think for many people, they know the power of habits and what habits can do in their life, but potentially haven't been taught a process that works, or a step by step framework that actually works, and possibly find themselves in a situation where they have the best intentions, they write the checklist, they have the list of daily non-negotiables of the things that they need to do, but for some reason they just can't seem to get that traction and the consistency with getting those things done.
Absolutely. And it does come down to the fact that we skip the step of design.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be like trying to build a house without having your plans, like
Mm-hmm.
without the architect having a roadmap for you to build that house. You just going in and getting some bricks and hoping that they stick together. That's
Mm-hmm.
not going to work. So when we're continually throwing in new things that we want to do, or changing things that we don't want to do anymore, we become overwhelmed. Our brain just starts to shut down. So there's a part of the brain, the amygdala, it's been there since, to protect us. We don't actually need it anymore. It was saber-toothed tigers were chasing us, and this was our stress response to say we need to run away from and keep ourselves safe. That's
Mm-hmm.
the amygdala fires up when we ask anything difficult of ourselves, and changing the things we've always done, or bringing in anything new in a world where we are so overwhelmed. We
Mm-hmm.
make 35,000 tiny decisions a day, is not going to work unless we design for success. So
Mm-hmm.
this is the step that if anyone's listening to this and they have one thing that they want to take away, it's that if you want to change something, we want to do this, follow this 3-step method. So, what we need to do to make a habit really easy, let's say that so Olivia, in your program,
Mm-hmm.
TBA, we have our daily non negotiables. So,
Mm-hmm.
you ask of us as your cohort, you need to do these things in every single day, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
But that just gets put on a to-do list, or it sort of sits there in our brain like, yep, need to do the daily non-negotiables, but we haven't planned it in. We
Mm-hmm.
can even put it in the calendar at a specific time, but if you haven't thought, on that day, what is it that I'm doing? Where is it that I am going to be in order to do those non-negotiables? It's likely that you're going to miss it. You'll miss it or you'll skip it.
Mm-hmm.
So what we need to do is identify an existing habit, so something you already do, to connect the new habit to in every day. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what's called our anchor or our cue. That's the thing that tells our brain, like, it's time to do your daily non-negotiables. We know from the research that we're actually blind to calendar reminders,
Mm-hmm.
to post-it notes. I do encourage that we still double down on the habit with these, just to reinforce. I definitely think that that's a helpful extra, but it's not actually going to determine success.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to do is go, right, after I sit down with my coffee. So you know that you always have a coffee in the morning. The first thing you want to then do are your daily non-negotiables.
Mm-hmm.
But where we need to start is making it tiny, right? So I said to the group in school, we need to actually start with one of those daily
Mm-hmm.
non-negotiables, because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, if we start with five and they maybe take 20, 25 minutes, again, our brain's going to fire up and resist and say, no,
Mm-hmm.
thank you. That seems really difficult today. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I didn't get enough sleep. Your brain starts to give you reasons not to do the hard thing. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
hard thing when we're
Mm-hmm.
asking of ourselves to change. So if you identify, though, that you every day you do have a coffee, every day you sit at your kitchen bench, this is the first thing you'll do. And you'll start with one thing from those daily non-negotiables. So it could be that it's posting a LinkedIn, um, doing some like 5 minutes of LinkedIn, for
Mm-hmm.
example. So it's not that you need to send 10 direct messages. It's that we just want to ask 5 minutes of ourselves, reduce it, remember, to the smallest possible component, make the habit tiny. And the third part of the habit is the celebration. So in James Clear's book, or any sort of habit theory, we talk about reward.
Mm-hmm.
But what we do in the tiny habit method is bring that reward into the moment, and that is what's going to supercharge the behavior to become a habit. All habits start as one-time behaviors, and what we want to do is fast track the consistency so that they become these repeatable these behaviors become a habit. So we
Perfect.
want to celebrate. We want to tell ourselves, good job, you did the thing. Some people like to do a wee dance, or some people do a fist bump, or do a high five to themselves, or whatever feels good for
Mm-hmm.
you to get that dopamine hit
Mm-hmm.
from doing the thing. We want to do that. So we link it to an existing habit. That's your anchor. Make the behavior tiny, as
Mm-hmm.
tiny as possible. We're talking 5 minutes, one page, write down three tasks. Plan out one day. Like, we just want it to be as small as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then we want to celebrate. And that are the components, the ingredients, or the formula for habit success.
Perfect. I love that so much. I think as well, I've heard that before for meditation. You know how a lot of people struggle with that, and they start a meditation practice and maybe they try and jump straight into 20 minutes of meditation with the Insight Timer app, with no guided meditation, no music, and it's just complete silence. That is so challenging to start that way, cold turkey, with 20 minutes of meditation with no music and, just your thoughts.
It's so
Even,
confronting. And
yeah,
that's
starting with
actually one of
1 minute.
an exact example I bring in. And I give 3 mindfulness kind of techniques that you can just start with, to show your brain, to give yourself the evidence that this is something that you enjoy and that you can actually do. But if you force yourself to sit there in silence on a meditation pillow, listening to something while your brain is in overwhelm and you cannot quiet your mind, it means that you're just going to give up.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to become a habit, because
Yeah.
it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Like, we need these habits to feel as good as possible, and start from a place of achievable, and not overwhelming.
Slightly off topic and not at all related to business, but it's related to habits. As you were talking about the anchoring and pairing things together, my mind was thinking about the polarity of good and bad or different. And I was thinking to myself, it's no wonder that smoking is highly addictive, because I was thinking about, for a lot of people, the coffee in the morning could be the anchor to have a cigarette. And
Absolutely.
there's so many things. I'm actually keen to unpack this further in regards to, there's healthy habits and then unhealthy habits, and potentially how to reverse unhealthy habits. I'm keen to unpack that a little bit, and maybe this is a good segue to go into it. But I think there's a lot of instances like that with glass of wine and this coffee and that. So I'd love for you
Absolutely.
to speak to that a little bit. If you've got an unhealthy habit right now, and maybe you need to do a bit of cleanup over here and to make space for some healthier habits potentially, how do you reverse a habit that's really ingrained? Maybe something that you've been doing for decades or for a really long time that's quite baked in.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And often it is our anchor moments can be the trigger for the behavior that we really want to remove.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't necessarily want to remove the trigger. So the coffee is not the problem,
Mm-hmm.
potentially. Potentially it is as
Yeah.
well. It's the cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
So what the method teaches us is that we first of all need to start with our why, like
Mm-hmm.
get really connected to the motivation behind why we want to change the habit. So
Mm-hmm.
often I'll have people come to me and they really want to build back exercise into their routine, and they think that they need to join a gym, or they
Mm-hmm.
think that they need to start running because that's what they've been told or they've seen or it's worked for their friend. But actually, when they connect to their own truth, like they don't want to join a gym, they don't want to be in that environment, they don't potentially have the money, they don't want to run, they've never run the length of themselves, like that's not the way of getting fit, that is going to work for them. So what they need to connect to is what is going to feel good for them and their why. So their why might be that they want to be able to run around in the playground with their child, or they want to look, fly in on their holiday to Bali, or they just want to feel like they know that exercise actually supports their mental health.
Yeah.
Um, and they really want to work on that so that they feel more positive, they felt flat. So what is the why? That's the first thing. If you want to give up something that you deem to be have a negative impact, I try and move away from
Mm-hmm.
shameful language like good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really going to help. That only kind of cultivates, like shame cannot thrive in the dark. So we want to remove that language, remove the shame, and just draw a line in the sand and say, okay, we're going to move forward from here. But often we expect to either go cold turkey, we go too big too soon, like we expect
Mm-hmm.
ourselves to just stop doing the thing,
Yeah.
or we put it off until we feel motivated enough.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those things are huge errors when it comes to habit change. Motivation is a finite resource. We cannot rely on it. And we can't just expect too much of ourselves. Like we need to make sure that it's in a way that feels achievable, like I've said before.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, we can't just leave a gaping hole for ourselves when we cut this. So when you have your morning coffee, and you reach for the next thing you do is reach for a cigarette packet, or you maybe reach for your phone. It might not be smoking, it
Mm.
could be digital scroll.
Yeah,
Like,
I was going to say, for those listening at home, if the cigarette analogy didn't land for you, because it may not be that, it could be anything. Like, I think a lot of time people watching TV might reach for the chocolate, and maybe the chocolate is the habit they're trying to break. Or it could have even
exactly, it
been,
could be
negative self-talk. So,
exactly. It could be that you go into social media and you start to have comparisonitis, and you
yes.
notice. The first step is noticing that it's something that feels good in the moment. You're always going to be rewarded for a
Mm-hmm.
habit, no matter if it's positive or negative in your life.
Yeah.
But noticing that it doesn't feel good, the aftermath of it, is the first step.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to replace the habit with a new habit. We can't leave that gaping hole. So if every time, and now I'll do a confessional, this is a habit of mine that I am breaking as we speak, because I'm not immune. Just because I know the theory does not mean I always put it into practice.
Spill
I am
the tea for us, Claire. We
human.
want to know.
But so my habit currently is after I sit down with maths, I will go to the cupboard and get a Tim Tam. And it's 9 o'clock. It's not an optimal time. Like, I
Mhm.
always feel sick afterwards. It doesn't make me feel good. I'm not even hungry. So I've had to design a habit. Now, to be honest, I am in realistic mode, and I've actually said, look, this is probably not something I'm going to break this week because I'm having a lot of late nights. I'm delivering international things at nighttime, and actually, that is my wind down.
Mhm.
And so I'm okay with it this week, like radical compassion. That's self-acceptance. Like, I'm all right with it. But I know that when I do break the habit, what I will do is every time I go into the cupboard, because I'll still do it, it's an automated behavior that maths has been on for quite a few weeks now. It's definitely a habit. I'll every time I open the cupboard, I will walk to the fridge and get my bottle of water and take a drink. And that pause is enough for me to connect to my why, for me to connect to the thought that isn't actually what I need. And I ask myself, am I hungry? So that's the new habit I will put in place when I'm ready to quit the Tim Tam. I will I will go to the fridge, I'll give myself that circuit break opportunity, and then
Mhm.
I'll ask myself the question, am I actually hungry? And if the answer is no, then I will go and sit my butt back down and just watch maths. If
Mhm.
the answer is yes, I'll ask, well, is this what's going to make me feel good?
Mhm.
Is the Tim Tam what's going to make me feel good? And sometimes I have frozen grapes in the freezer, and that's like a really modish, nice little alternative snack.
Mhm.
So you need to give yourself alternative actions.
Mhm.
And with things that are really addictive, like really get the dopamine spiking, like your social media, your phone scroll, like something that is addictive, we really need to make that new habit something that is it feels at least like somewhat goes some way to feel as good.
Mhm.
It
Do
needs
you
to be something, yeah, that feels good for you.
do you think that there's a way that you could apply this process and framework to behavior? So, for example, if you are experiencing the negative emotion of anger, if your default response when you're angry is to go and do X, whatever X resembles, do you think that you could apply this logic around habits to replace that negative emotion and I guess what you do after with something that is more healthy or more positive? Is there some correlation there with behavior too?
Yes, absolutely. So, what is the opposite that you can do? So, if you are having an emotion and you typically say you've got like overwhelm or stress, and what
Mhm.
you tend to do is go on your phone and online shop, like
Mhm.
impulse buy, what
Yeah.
is something that you know that that behavior is going to come up? What is something that you can do instead, but you have it at the ready? You're not giving your brain like things to think about in that moment, because actually this is a fight or flight stress response. Whether you're
Mhm.
angry or overwhelmed or tired or sad or whatever the emotion is, you are having a response, and you don't have rational thought.
Mhm.
We are in our emotional brain, we're not in our logic brain. So making choices that are better for us is all the more difficult, which is why we need to just continually make it easier and easier and easier for ourselves.
Mhm.
Something that I introduce, because this is something I really struggle with, like I will always reach for the addictive, impulsive behavior.
Mhm.
That is something that comes from having a neurospicy brain.
Mhm.
And I'll always reach for the like tap out, like how can I tap out?
Yeah.
But asking me to think about something that's better for me in the moment was
Mhm.
also overwhelming, and it just made me double down on the negative habit or behavior. So I created something called my me time menu, and it's a
Oh.
menu with three pillars, three kind of columns,
Yeah.
things I can do in less than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's like your short, sharp, and shiny, like step
Mhm.
outside and take deep breaths, put on a podcast that's 5 minutes, or a playlist that
Mhm.
I've already got. I've got one called High Vibe. like
Love that.
something that's
Yeah.
going to jolt me out of the emotion. But maybe I've only got 5 minutes because I've got kindy pickup in half an hour, or I've got a meeting that I need
Mhm.
to get to, or I just can't take longer than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Splashing cold water on your face. There's lots of things on my list that are 5 minutes. Like I
Mhm.
pull an affirmation card just to connect back to myself and my body. How can you do that? Then the middle is my kind of 30 minutes, 30
Mhm.
minute mark, maybe 30 minutes to 45 minutes.
Mhm.
So what is it? Can I read a chapter of my book on my Kindle? Can I
Yes.
listen to a whole podcast?
Yeah.
Can I take a minute to call a friend?
Mhm.
Can I do some planning for my holiday that's coming up
Mhm.
in Bali? I like Bali. And then I've got my me time menu is I've got something what I like to call good for clear days. So it can be at like a half day or a full day where I plan out an actual experience. Like I'll take myself to the cinema for a solo day. I'll maybe book in a massage. These take a bit more forward planning and aren't for when those
Mm.
emotions are regulated. But if you've had a week or a month of feeling like that, the best thing you can do for yourself is give yourself a reset that's a bit more substantial.
Mhm.
To really show to yourself that I matter, and also to refuel that tank that's been continually depleted. And those days are really critical, and I know you encourage us in TBA to kind of build that in. But good for you day, like what is a good for you day? And this menu just removes the thinking out of it. It's one less thing to think about, and you can put it in your phone, in your notes. You can just
Mhm.
have a list of 5 minute, 30 minute, half a day, or you can put it on your wall, print it out.
Love that. It's part of the process that I go through in the $1 Million Year workshop, which we've done this session inside the business advisory, where you plan out your year and you look at, from a freedom perspective, what's something you can do for yourself every week, every month, every quarter, every year. And, like you mentioned, some of those activities take some forward planning and may need to go into the calendar ahead of time, and you need to make a booking. So having that thought process and that clarity up front of these are the ways that I'm going to honor myself is really important, because I find not only with myself, but with clients as well, if I, if I ask a client, let's say, rate your self-care as a CEO, how you're feeling with your energy, your emotions, your capacity at the moment in all of the ways, out of 10, with 10 being amazing and 0 being, I'm on the brink of checking myself into a hospital for burnout. Score yourself, and I hear a score come back at a 2 or a 3 or a 4, that's crisis mode to be able to put those practices in place and get that client to stop everything, go back to themselves, get themselves to a healthier space so that they can show up with full capacity and be able to lead their business and lead themselves in their personal life. But what I find is, if you don't have that habit in place where you've got a self-care ritual or cadence or frequency that you're sticking to, you can get to a point where maybe you might be fooled into thinking, I'm feeling really good, I don't need to do this anymore, or I can, start to backtrack a little bit. Maybe I won't go for the massage this month because I'm actually feeling okay. But then soon enough and sure enough, it does catch up with you. And I think that this is why the habits component is so important, because sometimes, and I'm sure you see it with the type of work that you do, you could be tricked into thinking that maybe you don't need to do that anymore, when in fact you do. It's just that you've gotten yourself to a really good point, but that then needs to be maintained.
You are spot on, and the research shows us this. So what you've just described in when we look at the 5 stages of burnout, the first stage is the honeymoon
Mm-hmm.
phase. And that's where we still have all the enthusiasm. We still are, we're yes people. We are probably flexing our boundaries a bit because we want to show up. We want to do the things. We want to put in our all.
Mm-hmm.
And we can only do that for so long. And I was presenting a session last night as part of International Women's Day with women, and there was about over 100 people on the call, and we were talking about there are two types of people. There are people that have, oh, I've got 10 miles left in me in the tank. you look at the gauge on your fuel tank and it's like right on the red, but we're like, I've got 10 miles left, I can keep going. And then there are people who are probably like only a quarter of the tank is empty, but they know that they could do with the top up. They could do with refueling the tank. And not many of us are on that side, let me tell you.
I was going to say that is definitely my toxic trait. It drives my husband nuts because every time he gets in my car, it's on the fuel lights on. But my thing is always, it's a bit of a game. Like, can I actually make it home with
I
this
know.
fuel
And
light
that's what we
on?
do in life. That's what we do in
Yeah.
business. Like, I need to just keep going. I will
Yes.
just a little bit more, one more hour,
Yeah.
one more project, one more
Which
committee,
it's a
one more
huge
commitment,
it's a
one more
huge
yes.
thing for people that have been diagnosed or undiagnosed with ADHD. But an ADHD brain is, this is how I think about it. It's, how some people can drink and then they don't have the filter or the marker of, I'm becoming too intoxicated, I need to stop now, and they keep going. I've never understood, that's not me, so I've never understood how that happens. But then I reflected on it and thought, well, hang on a second. If you replace drinking with working and you replace blackout drunk with burnout,
Yep.
that's no different to what a lot of people do with work. They don't get the flag of, okay, I'm tired, I need to go to sleep, or I need to take a day off, or I need to take a step back, because if I don't, then I'm going to hit, crisis mode. And so it ends up being that for a lot of business owners with that ADHD brain, it's this constant work, 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 crash, work, 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 crash.
Exactly. And that is one of the other phases of burnout. It's that habitual stress state. So
Mm-hmm.
we're just that's our norm.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're used to. We don't really know any different. And so, how are we meant to check in and go, I've pushed it too far? So, what we do need to do is in every single day, we need to be checking in with ourselves. We need to have some sort of prioritization for our well being holistically. And our well being is body, mind, and soul. Those three things need to work together to have an effective human experience in the long run. So I was told explicitly, like, you're not going to live as long if you keep going this way. Not all of us get that message. Like, that was actually lucky for
Mm-hmm.
me to hear that, because I would have kept going and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. Never before have I ever been busier and have more on my plate, I would say, as a single mom, transitioning our business from one to the other. So, kind of juggling two with no family structure, no support network, that I can really call upon.
Mm-hmm.
But I still prioritize my well being no matter what, because I know that I'm not just going to pour from my cup. I have to pour from the overflow of
Mm-hmm.
I can't give to the people in my life, to my work, to my clients, if I am running on anything but full.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that this is always my modus operandus. It's not. I'm not perfect. We are human beings and we have to be kind and compassionate to ourselves. There are going to be weeks where it just doesn't look like that. And we know we've burnt the candle at both ends.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as that's the exception and not the rule,
Mm-hmm.
then we get to thrive and we get to feel like we are living a life that is not just, about working towards burnout.
Yes. It's so important. And it's definitely a journey I've been on myself, with having to work on habits that I've had in place where I have overworked and I've overdone things and I've over delivered. And, this starts to go into more around, belief systems and values and, how you've been raised. But I had to learn to undo a lot of, things that I'd learned as a child growing up, where I would only receive praise when I performed. And so that then created an addiction around, how can I constantly be high performing? How can I constantly over deliver? And then that then led to a lot of unhealthy habits over the course of my career, where I made myself too available to my own detriment. And a lot of the time it wasn't even being asked of me. But, some of us find ourselves in a position where we overdo everything. And so it's been a real journey for me personally, learning to undo some of those behaviors, replace them with healthier habits, and give myself grace as well, that it's okay to show up and do your best or do my best, and that's fine. And I even had this experience last week where I had a workshop that I was delivering, and 2 hours before I found out that one of my dear friends, her mum, passed away that morning. And she was just the most incredible human being, just like a second mum to me growing up. And I was a mess. I thought, how am I going to deliver this workshop in 2 hours' time? I'm bawling my eyes out. This is just awful news. But I showed up. I did it. I did my best. It probably wasn't my best work, but that's okay. I gave myself grace, and I thought, I'm really proud of me for showing up and doing that when I wasn't in my best state. And previously, the older version of me would have shamed myself. I would have been really cross with myself. I would have, had this standard, this unrealistic standard that I had to meet. But for me, it was a really big observation that I made to take a step back and go, wow, I've been really kind to myself in this moment, not shaming myself and giving myself that grace. So I think behavior and habits as well is so powerful. It's not just about the gym routine or getting that LinkedIn post out in the morning. It's all of the behavior that goes around how you're treating yourself on a day-to-day basis too.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Liv, because I think there's so much power in vulnerability, and the work of Brene Brown is fascinating and really empowering. Like, the more that we share the struggles and that we're showing up anyway, and it doesn't have to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't have to do the thing, we are the one, we're meaning making machines. That's it. Nothing is real. It's
Mm-hmm.
all just made up. And see,
Yeah.
when you actually connect to that point, you're like, wow, none of it really actually matters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that, you just shared a story that is actually life and death, and you got to take breath that day,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you got to show up and you got to do the thing that you loved, and you were grieving and you were going through something so vulnerable, but you still took the brave steps, you still took the action, and you had to remove that perfectionist hat, like, which we,
Mm-hmm.
many women suffer with.
Yeah.
That we hold ourselves to such high standard, and I'm sure the story of what you experienced as a child and where you received reward and praise is very familiar to many people listening. It certainly was for me. That's all we've known,
Mm-hmm.
and that's, we have to undo those generational kind of patterns and habits that we have created, or coping mechanisms that we've put in place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we just have to have an awareness of them and not expect too much of ourselves. But the vulnerability, like, we need more of that. We need more truth telling. And
Mm-hmm.
I've shown up to things where I've had, I've had to show up to similar trainings, and I've had some personal things going on, and at some point, I've had an emotional reaction to someone sharing their story, and I've cried,
Mm-hmm.
like, in the front of a room.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what, the thing that in the feedback is, thank you for being vulnerable and allowing me to do the same, to feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's just really, that's a habit. And the action, like, the confidence to do that comes from taking the action. And it's the action that then makes it a habit and leads it to be your norm. And that's what you're experiencing. And that's where well-being starts. Like, this is why, we just need to start really small. When we've always been the baller that never takes a day off, that just keeps going, or that doesn't share how they're really feeling and says yes to everything and doesn't hold back,
Mm-hmm.
all of that. If that's our norm, like, we cannot expect to change that overnight. So
Yes.
start with one thing, make it really small, and then start to see that catalyst effect. And I guarantee it will happen. Change will happen for you. You just
Mm-hmm.
have to keep showing up.
Yes.
Show up.
On that note, I'm curious to ask, a lot of listeners, I'm sure, are similar personality types, take on lots of things, potentially overcook things from time to time, or, too fast, too furious, start putting a new habit in place, and to your point, try and do 10 things all at the same time. If they take the approach of doing one thing and nailing that and really baking that habit in, when is the right time to add the second habit in, or the next habit if you're up to the second or third thing? is there a marker or something that we should be looking for to know, okay, I've got this in the bag now, it's time to add the second thing and I think I can handle that?
Only you can really answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
We know that habit change, on average, it takes 66 days to change a behavior. So you see all this 21-day challenges, 21 days to change your life, 21 days to build your business, 21 days to get some abs. Like that's not real.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot change behavior. That was actually related to a really like a study where it was a plastic surgeon was looking at how long it took people to get used to their new nose. So it's nothing to do with habit change. That's from the 60s, and the media kind of jumped on it and bastardized it,
Mm-hmm.
as they do. But we need to really give it time. We
Mm-hmm.
need to give it time and really sense check like the environment in which you're operating, the season of life.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will be able to cope with up to 3 changes at a time. Like if your life is kind of steady state. But if you're going through some turmoil or you've had some changes already, that are, you feel like you are in that kind of overwhelm, or you're kind of just going day to day, we do need to start with one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can start to either stack. So to make it easier for yourself, stacking essentially means building a habit onto the same habit. Like the habits happen at the same time
Mm-hmm.
in that same window. And that can be a lot easier because you've already made the space for one thing. So could you add something else?
Got you. So it could be like you've made your morning coffee, you've written down 3 things that you're grateful for, and maybe that was the initial thing, and then you've added on that you're going to take that gratitude post and turn it into a social media post or something.
Exactly. So you start with the organization task, like how you're going to handle your day, manage your day, and then you move into something practical for the business, like social media,
Yeah.
LinkedIn, whatever it is. Yes, exactly. That's going to make it easier if you do the stack, not trying to pick another time of day to introduce something else. But eventually, I have 15 things that I do, my non-negotiables, I guess, every day. This is my whiteboard that I fill in. And you can see that I've done really well this week, but I have been traveling, so I'm giving myself some kudos. But I break it into, these are the things I do in the morning, these are the things I do throughout my day, and these are the things I do at night. And that just helps. We know that tracking, giving ourselves data, can be really helpful. If you do want a way, like a more methodical way to check if you're ready to start building out your habits, do use a tracker, either in your diary or an app. There's lots of apps out there that you can use, because then you can see, am I being consistent with this habit? You're not lying to yourself. Like, it's hard to remember if you've actually how long you've been doing things for. So use a tracker. That'll give you a pattern. Like, that gives you the data. And if you've noticed that, well, yeah, actually you've been doing something consistently for 3 or 4 weeks and you've only missed a couple of days, then that's likely that it's become a habit and you're ready for something else. But just remember, don't then speed things up and go too hard, too big, too
Love
big,
that.
too
I was
quickly.
even thinking as well, potentially, if you've done something for 66 days or more, then maybe you're ready. It should be baked in by that point. But to your
It
point,
depends how hard the habit is. So it can be the research. It's very recent research, and it was a huge study. 254 days is the upper limit. And if that habit is fully ingrained, those neural pathways are going to be really hard to change and override. So you will know intuitively. The data can tell you if you need that, whether it's become a habit or not.
love that. Oh, I feel like I could talk to you all day about habits and life and behavior. It's been such a great conversation. I'd love to finish up with 3 tips from you. Obviously, there are lots of visionary CEOs that listen to the show, high performing women in businesses or in senior corporate roles, etc. What are 3 tips that you can share with listeners to finish up that are your go-to tips that you love to share with your clients on how they can build healthy habits in their life to improve their fulfillment? And, as you were saying off air before, creating that harmony in their life?
Well, the first tip I would say is just try and make the habit as appealing and attractive as possible for you to do. So, if it is that you want to have a more tidy desk, like, and you need to get that sorted, like at the end of every day, you know that you're a hot mess and you end up, the desk is just an absolute riot of papers and things and cups and whatever. And you know that every single day you want to clear the desk so that you start from a fresh place. How do you make that appealing?
Mm-hmm.
Can you add music? Can you add a podcast when you do it? Every single time I put the washing away or hang it out, I listen to a podcast, non-negotiable. I need that to drive me to do the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So think about habits that are really difficult as a way. How do you ritualize? How do you ritualize? Not only do you then make it more likely you're going to do it, but you give yourself a reward for doing
Mm-hmm.
it whilst doing it. So supercharge the habit, find a way to ritualize. The second thing I would say is accountability is everything. You
Mm-hmm.
are going to be 65% more likely to do the thing if you say it out loud to someone. So pick up the voice note. And you're going to be 95% more likely if you actually have someone that's checking in on you. So I just had a client who needed to get up earlier. She was really struggling to get out of bed in the morning. She would spend an hour on her phone scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did was her accountability, and this was kind of a ritual as well, so it was like doubled up, is she would take a selfie and
Mm-hmm.
send it to her friend.
Mm-hmm.
So it would say, I'm up, selfie. And that was her accountability mechanism. So it doesn't have to be another habit. That is another habit that she was
Yeah.
bringing in. It can just be that you are, someone is checking in with you
Mm-hmm.
if they've done that. But you need that accountability. You need to be honest with yourself. And the third thing is don't skip celebration.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that the habit is designed in as the ABC. So remember, anchor, tiny behavior, celebration. The
Mm-hmm.
celebration can be really wildly uncomfortable for people who have never been able to give themselves props. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if you struggle to congratulate yourself, to celebrate yourself, it's likely you're going to even struggle to do that silently. But please don't skip it. It is going to build that positive mentality. It is going to fast track the success of your habits in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah, those are my three hot tips when it comes to habit change.
Thank you. That was brilliant and so, so helpful. On the dopamine thing, though, the celebration part at the end, I remember reading, and maybe it was in Atomic Habits, but I remember reading that initially your brain needs that celebration, but over time, the reward that you can get is the intrinsic value of what that habit has brought you. So if, initially you're starting a new exercise regime or something and you're going to the gym, you might reward yourself with a nice protein shake afterwards or whatever it is. But in time, your reward is actually the fact that you've worked towards having your dream body and being stronger and having more energy. And then that sort of self-perpetuates, doesn't it? So you've got that ongoing intrinsic value that you're getting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The celebration, I guess, is different to the reward because it's just you acknowledging that you have done something hard, like you've done the thing that you said you would do.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like pat on the back. And sometimes that just happens to fall away because it just is
Mm-hmm.
part of who we are. It becomes part of our identity. I
Mm-hmm.
start my day with a positive affirmation. Today is going to be a good day. And in fact, I've done it for nearly 800 days, pretty much consistently, no matter where I am. And that's the habit that everyone starts with,
Mm-hmm.
as part of the tiny habits method. But I don't tend to say good job for that anymore because it's just part of who I am.
Yeah.
I start the day, and how you start the day is how you experience the rest of
Yes.
the day. So we want that to, if anyone wants to do that, it's called the Maui habit. And you can pop this into ChatGPT, like give me some tiny habit ideas to
Yeah.
start my day. Use that to help you design habits that are going to be the best for you, as the person that you want to show up as in this very precious life that we have.
Yes. Amazing. Thank you so much for all of your wisdom and insights today. It's been incredible to have you on the show. And yeah, I'm so excited to get this episode live so everyone can start reaping all of the benefits from it. If listeners are keen to connect with you, how can they touch base with you to learn more about what you do or have conversations around tiny habits and making their life more fulfilling?
The best place to connect is LinkedIn. So that I've had a massive social media detox in the past 12 months and have come off Instagram. But LinkedIn is where I hang out. I share tips and tricks and insights there. And I would absolutely love to continue the conversation there and support you in any way I can with evolving your habits.
Amazing.
Thank you, Liv, for such a brilliant conversation. It was so easy to have that with you. You're clearly a woman who knows their stuff when it comes to habits. So it was super fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. It's been a pleasure to have you, and I hope you've enjoyed the episode today. As always, love hearing from you by Instagram, LinkedIn, all of the places. And excited to have Claire back again, hopefully for version 2, and we can do the next layer on habits and share even more value there. So thanks for joining us, Claire.
Thanks, Liv.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show today. If you loved today's episode, be sure to let me know by leaving a 5-star review at oliviajenkins.co. You can also connect with me via Instagram DMs at oliviajenkins.co or learn more on how we can work together at www.oliviajenkins.co. Have an amazing week, and I can't wait to connect with you in the next episode.